Howdy, welcome to Papa John's World. Today we're going to make a repair on a cast iron lawn pump. The drain plugs for both of these have been ate out. The cast iron's completely gone on the bottom and he can't make a watertight seal with these plugs. This pump belongs to one of my friends and he told me he was going to buy a new pump. So I told him, you don't have to, I'll fix it for you if you'd like. And what we're going to do today is we're going to take a steel cap, and it's a 1/4 inch threaded cap. We're going to drill a 5/16 hole through the bottom of it. We're going to grind a flat spot off on this case on both plugs. Take off all the plastic fittings. We'll build a little forge here with fire brick, and I'll use a weed burner to preheat this probably around 500 degrees. And then we'll use nickel 55 stick rod and we'll weld that right to the pump base in both these places. After it's welded, if it takes weld good, we'll post heat it again just to even that heat up. And then I have a metal trash can with dimaceous earth. I'll put it in the dimaceous earth and bury it, and we'll leave it there till tomorrow. It'll cool down nice and slow. Some of the things we'll do when we stick weld this, we'll weld a little bit and we'll peen that with a chipping hammer. We'll just hit the weld, and what it does is that nickel cools off, and you peen it, it helps that nickel expand, because the steel expands at one rate, the cast iron expands at another, and the cast iron's pretty brittle, so it doesn't have much give. The nickel is fairly soft, so it can move. That's the theory behind it. Anyway, come with me and we'll see what we can do to get this done. Put the lathe on slow speed. This is built up. Okay. You could do this in a drill press. You could buy a coupling and cut it in half also. Just getting a good center. I think that'll work good. Well, that's where that went. So make sure my valve on my torch is off, and I turn my bottle on slow. And we'll crack it. So we're going to turn that down to about 70-ish. Turn our welder on. Now we're going to weld a little bit on a little practice piece too, just to make sure we're good before we strike an arc on that cast. .552, 512, 534, 515. Well, let's see what we can do with it. Pretty normal to get a few holes in your weld. We'll go over them. Whoop. we'll leave that till tomorrow. It's the next day. It says it's 52 degrees. Let's see if it's still warm. No, it's 60, so it's cooled off. That's good. We'll get that out of there and put it back on the table and retap the threads. A little cutting oil on the tap. It's an 1/8 inch tap. This is verifying that it's clear, and I'm going to get a welding BB in it. Make it hard for. We can probably take them off till we get the big guy. Forgot, I think. This is 3/8 pipe. You tap, you run against a hard spot, just back it up and don't try to cut it all at once. You feel it get tight, and then it gets tight again, it releases, gets tight. Okay. Pipe threads are tapered, so the farther they screw in, the tighter they get. Really cutting a little bit of the casting. This is a 2-inch tap. Let's get a bigger wrench for that. No, that'll fit. Mainly just cleaning the rust out of those threads. You can see the junk in the threader that it cut out of those threads. They look pretty good. I think it's 1.5 inches. Usually it's 2-inch suction, 1.5 inch discharge. Usually it drops the pipe size. Some are 2x2, but you don't want to restrict the suction of a pump, but you can restrict the discharge. So it's always good to start them by hand, because sometimes you have to kind of feel them in there. mostly dirt and rust that it's taken out of the threads. They're pretty rough, but this is an old pump. But that'll seal up. That's the suction side. And the discharge looks a little bit better, but a little Teflon tape around the pipe fitting and it'll screw in there good. I did want to say one other thing. Most of the time, this is how the pump sets. Most of the time they break right around this bottom. They'll crack all the way out. And to fix it, you do it the same way as we did for welding this, but you'd grind that crack out. Just take a 1/4 inch grinding wheel like this one and just grind right along the crack all the way around. Preheat it, weld it the same way. But typically I'll start welding here and weld this way, weld here and weld that way, and then come back and start here and go that way, and here and go that way, back and forth. If I get another one this summer or spring to fix, I'll make another video on fixing the crack. But you can do it the same way. I haven't done it in a couple years. I'm a little rusty on it. The other thing is I practiced a little bit afterwards, and I should have done it prior. If you have a DC welder and you run it on your Stinger positive, it will weld a little bit smoother than what this did on AC. But a lot of people have the little AC buzz boxes, and it is possible to fix a pump with one of those, because that's what we did on this one. Did I tell you this was an old pump? It's an old pump, all right. The other thing I didn't say or mention was you have to take them apart to fix them. You can't fix them bolted to the motor. They have a little, this is a little, it's like leather, and it keeps air from being sucked or water back into the suction side of the pump. And a lot of times these are plastic. This one isn't, it's metal. But these pieces, a lot of the times on the newer pumps, they're going to be plastic. 2 bolts, and you can take them off. Sometimes you'll twist these bolts off. And there's another trick for getting those bolts out, and it's not drilling a hole in them and it's easy out, but it's actually welding a nut on the broken stud. It works really well. When you heat that steel up, it goes in and breaks that loose. I'll try to demonstrate some of that. Red RTV gasket sealer on a, yeah. I could use assembly grease too. That would hold it, but I don't want to contaminate any of the water with grease. There, that'll hold that up there. Good enough to go back together. Nine 9/16 bolts. Just 4 bolts on it. I could have tapped those out, but they come out really easy. I wasn't too worried about it. This pump had been apart some other time. Just try to tighten it up even. Not too tight to start off with, just touch the surfaces together. So I'm kind of watching this groove to keep it uniform. Not super tight. That O-ring will seal that up good. Which actually it's a rectangular ring, it's not an O-ring. Talk a minute about Teflon tape. Sometimes you buy Teflon tape that's that full. You buy it from a good quality dealer, it's that full. We really should be using 3/4 wide. This is barely a 1/2 inch wide. when you want a Teflon tape, anything, get it pulled out, get the tape feeding off the top of the roll. You can see that. Get the tape feeding off the top of the roll. Hold your fitting that you want to tape. Start at the bottom, hold it with that finger, wrap it around behind the threads, then work it out to the front of the threads. 1, 2, 3, and that's good. And then just seal it on there with your finger. This wasn't very tight when I took it apart. It probably doesn't need to be super tight. But it was pointing off that direction. So we're gonna leave it there. We'll let the gentleman that owns it tighten it one more turn if he needs to. Get his angle right. Again, we'll get the tape out. The bottom of the tape. This is the suction side of the pump. We're gonna thread it up a little farther, like that, and then just touch it like that and pull it apart. I always like to smooth it out a little bit before I screw it in. If you go the wrong way, and when you try to screw it in, it will bunch up and it makes it unwind the tape. When you do it the right way, it pretty much goes in with the fitting. Okay. This goes straight down. We'll get it a little bit tighter. Probably this turn will stop. Okay. Well, that's it. That's a cast iron pump repair on an older pump. And like I said, this is an elderly gentleman. It saved him $450 for buying a new pump, and he'd probably had to hire an electrician because it don't look too good. I might talk to him about his wires before he puts it back together. Looks like he's got to fix it. That's a ground. So anyway, there it is. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.